So now I've spent multiple years, lots of experience planning training sessions, assessing training sessions, delivering training sessions for coaching licenses or as model coaching or even just everyday process with working with teams. And I think the only answer that we have to get a yes for when we plan our training sessions and when we deliver our training sessions is it game-like? Now, this might shock you, but this isn't about saying that one process is better than another, that small-sided games or the US soccer methodology, grassroots, play, practice, play is the solution. That's certainly not where I'm going with this. But I'm adding some context so that whatever you do in your training sessions, because again, another thing I've learned is there is nothing wrong or right, or there is no absolute way of running training sessions for the betterment of our players. The trust is that you know your players, so you do that. But really understanding what game-like is. So the only real way that we are training in the game is if we are playing 11v11. And then, of course, coaching from the side, coaching in the flow. That is the game. That is what the players experience on the weekend. Or again, if it's 7v7 or 9v9. But 11v11 is the game. That's what you see on TV. That's what the World Cup is. That is the game that everybody knows. Everything beyond that is a simulation. Now, this is where it becomes philosophical and the arguments become, well, if you play small-sided games, it looks like the game versus isolated training. That isolated training doesn't have some of the elements of the game. But my idea here and my takeaways for you are to define what game-like looks like and then how we may use that. So let's get into it. What is game-like? If you think about the game as you watch it, there are some elements to it. There is direction, so we are attacking a goal. Soccer is an invasion game. We are trying to get into their space and trying to score into their goal, and they are doing the same thing against us. So there is competition there. There is an opponent. There is a winner and a loser. Sometimes there's a tie, but we are playing to win, or we are playing to not lose if you frame it that way. But we definitely go into every game and say that we want to win. Even those people who say it's not about winning. Winning is a really nice reinforcer of what you are doing. If you lose, you might blame the ref, you might blame someone else, you might say they didn't play nice soccer, but there is the reality of the game that there are winners and losers. And something that is often missed is that there are rules, not just the idea of constraints. You have to make 5 passes before you score and things like that. But actually the rules of the game. There are throw-ins, there are corners, there are goal kicks, there are distances from free kicks. There are all sorts of rules. You can't use your hands, you can't foul people, etc., etc. All of this leads to, in my opinion, one big thing, which is intensity. You're playing against a tough opponent. You're playing in the final minutes of a game to win. There is a significant amount of intensity. And you know it. Think about the last maybe pickup soccer game you played. And after an hour of pickup soccer, the game has a big hole in the middle and it's just attack against defense on both sides of the field. Is it intense? Maybe not. What about if you're losing 10-0? Is it intense? You might be intense, but that may not be working for your team. But there's a low intensity. I remember losing 12-0 in a tournament game once. And it was so quiet in the middle of a tournament that you could hear cars starting in the parking lot. That's how bad it was. There was zero intensity. Our opponent was too strong. We had no chance of getting anywhere near them. So all of these elements lead to what I think is one important thing of intensity. So then we reframe the question. It is game-like, hopefully. We are replicating the game situation if we are getting intensity in our training sessions. So go back to the training session you ran last night, or the training session you ran earlier this week, or the one you're going to run tomorrow. How does that look like the game? And then factor in some of those elements from earlier. Where is the competition? What is the opponent doing? Who are the winners and who are the losers? How do they win? How do they lose? What are the rules? Do you have throw-ins? Do you have corners? Do you have offside? Do you have fouls? All of these elements that lead to, again, that intensity. So the simple way is to say, play, practice, play, small-sided games, 4v4 to 4 goals, 5v5 plus 2 to target goals, target players. All of these elements that are made to look like the game. There is competition. There is small-sided challenges in there. We play 3v3, we play in triangles. We play 4v4, we play in a diamond. Then we can build on the triangles underneath that as we get up into higher levels and understanding for our players and their ability to play that game. This is why I think teaching games for understanding is a really, really good approach. You may not like it. That's okay. But it adds elements of the game, in my opinion, where now we are able to build to intensity. There will be a winner and a loser, and I often reward the winners and don't punish the losers. Losing is bad enough. If we want to push them to care about the result, it's that they also want to win because there's something. You get to pick your own pennies. You get to pick the clean pennies. You get to determine who's on your team. You get to start with the ball for the first 5 minutes of the final game. There's 1,000 things that we can do in there. But the biggest thing is that the winners and losers are identified. Here's how you win this game, and here's what happens when you win this, and then so on and so on. So that's why we use small-sided games. That's why we will use things like play, practice, play also, because the two elements of play and the training activity replicate the game as much as possible. And with our younger players or with our inexperienced players who don't play that much soccer, they get lots of exposure to playing the game. It's a really, really good skill. It's a really good opportunity for them to gain experience that translates directly to the game on the weekend. But just by playing small-sided games, think about the parents in your club or other parents that you've heard say all they do is play games. Well, is that small-sided game environment, is that games-based approach managing the competition? Is it keeping the teams balanced? Is it challenging the opponent? Is there a winner and a loser that's clearly identified and celebrated? Are there rules that stop this just becoming a playground kick-around, which rightly leads people to watching to say, they just play. There is no coaching, there is no intervention, there is no structure. Now, that is often why I believe this games-based approach, small-sided games, is often overlooked or criticized because there is that theory that we are just playing games. Rightly so, if we're not managing all of those elements, which builds to the intensity. But then what if you do have skill development in your training sessions? What if you do isolate some skill work, or you do pattern play, or every player has a ball for the first 10 minutes and they work on skills and moving the ball? Again, there's no right or wrong. I might do that. I might not do that. You might do something different than what I do. And if we were both given the same topic of a training session or the same kind of microcycle, it would look very different. And that's arguably the beauty of coaching. But what if you do layer those things in? How do you get it to be game-like when every player has a ball? Is it possible? Is it required? Well, I think about the translation of training to the game. You know, the theory of you play how you practice. You are only able to translate what you do in training if it is immediately replicable into that game environment, which means if you're not playing against an opponent, the theory is if you're not playing against an opponent, if you're not playing for a winner or a loser, you're not playing within the rules of the game, then what you're doing is completely removed from the game on the weekend. I subscribe to that feeling a little bit, but I understand and I know, having just completed a survey with our membership, that they are looking for more what they would consider skill development. And we could go down the rabbit hole of defining what skill and technique is and how we train that and et cetera, et cetera. But if you have your way and your methodology of how you like to teach your players how to do X, Y, and Z on the ball, then how do you make it game-like? Do you do it in a skill challenge where you say everybody has a ball, here's the skill, here's the moves, go beat 5 cones, go beat 5 dummies, beat 5 poles, do as many as you can in 30 seconds, and then we'll have a competition for the person who does the most or the person who does it the best. And think about the old school skill school when they would have one-on-one and the rest of the players would be around them cheering, and that was kind of like a Soccer AM gimmick. But there's an element of that. Can you hype them up? Can you drive this competition within them? Then how does it look like what is the opponent? How soon can you get an opponent into this? Because you are developing a skill Now we're going to go and use that skill. Again, it's a skill if we can translate that technique into the action required within the game. We're working on the scissors, we're working on the pullback. That's amazing. But why do we need these skills? How soon can you introduce the players to using those skills, and what does that look like? And does that competition from the 30-second skill challenge to the players who can do the most pullbacks in a row, how does that translate to the 2v2 game you're going to do? If you do a pullback and then score, is that a goal? Do you start with a player receiving the ball with pressure on their back so that a natural pullback, once they create space, takes them to goal? Because if you go face up 2v2, a pullback is the worst thing you could be working on, because naturally, if I receive the ball and I'm looking at your goal and you're in front of me, I do a pullback and now I'm going back towards my own goal. That doesn't really help me. And in youth soccer especially, the crowd would be going crazy. Where are you going? That's the wrong way. It's the wrong way. So carefully considering, how do you make it game-like? And again, this isn't about you needing to do teaching games for understanding, or you needing to absolutely not do any sort of technical training or anything like that. And of course, it's absolutely okay to give every player a ball for the first 5 minutes and give them some free play and let them go and be creative with their skills and do something like a skill score without the actual structure of the game. But my challenge to you is, if you only have 2 hours or 3 hours with these players and you're expecting them to go and perform on the weekend, my challenge to you is to make it as game-like as possible, as quickly as possible. So winners and losers in individual skill challenges, absolutely. Winners and losers in small-sided games, of course. That's a natural kind of part of the training session. But how can you make it like the game? And when you make it like the game, it translates. So if there's pressure, if there's a booing crowd over the players doing skill challenges, you might be there. But just consider, how is it like the game?